I want to talk a bit today about what inspires me to write as a historian. And I think my first confession is I don't really feel like a real historian. What I'm really interested in is what I think of as the living past, meaning if people who lived through a certain historical period are still alive, then it's interesting to me. When no one is left alive from a moment in the past, that's where I start to lose interest. So I've always felt like a bit of an imposter as a historian, but that's really what inspires me. And I'm also interested in the uses of the past in the present. And what I mean by that is, until you start looking for it, you're probably not very aware of how much we use the past. When I say we, I mean everybody. We use it in our daily lives as individuals, we use it in our family groups, in our workplaces, in small groups, and we use it in society as well. We use it for pedagogical purposes, for moral purposes, we use it for political purposes, and all of those interest me. It's very fitting that today is January 27th, Holocaust Memorial Day, because the book that I want to talk a bit about today, which is my first publication called Commemorating the Holocaust, is very much about Holocaust Memorial Days and why these commemorations exist. It's actually a lot of work to put these sorts of things together. So what inspires states to promote them? What inspires people to get involved in them? It's really about how we use that memory of the Holocaust for purposes in the present, and we use it for all sorts of purposes, I think. When I started this book, and it's taken me 10 years to write this book, I had a very broad question in mind. It didn't start out as a project about Holocaust commemoration. It started as a different sort of project. What I was interested in was actually, quite broadly, the memory of World War II. And how that memory has changed over time. I'm talking about kind of public memory. You could call it the collective memory. Particularly, there's a moment where the memory really seems to shift, and it's just in the early 1990s, the 1990, 91, 92, as in the end of the Cold War. In so many ways, the geopolitics of the Cold War were holding the memory of World War II in a very static way. But when that ends, the memory explodes. It changes profoundly. Suddenly the Holocaust comes to play a very central role. And that's how I started down the route of looking into Holocaust commemorations. It was a very circuitous route in a way. I like to start a project with a very big question in mind, and then wander through the question as if you're kind of wandering through a forest and you think, oh, that path looks interesting. Oh, I don't know where that'll take me. And just seeing what happens. As I said, this project took me 10 years to complete. I honestly think that I wasn't sure exactly what the project was about until I was almost finished it. It changed direction so many times, but that's actually what I find the most inspiring in working as a historian, is just being open to seeing where something's going to go, in questioning your assumptions about where the project will go. In terms of publication, well, preparing a book for publication has its interesting bits and it has its boring bits. I find the really interesting stuff is, of course, when you're playing with the big ideas and thinking about what does this all mean, how does it fit together. The really boring bit is when you go back to your script again and again and again and revise it and think, oh, have I explained this clearly, or should I move this to a different chapter? At the end of that process, there was probably a couple of days in which I said to myself, I'm never writing another book again. But once it was over, within a few weeks, I already was dreaming of my next book. So it is a difficult process to go through, but ultimately it is a wonderful thing to see a big project completed, and I'm really excited about getting started on my next book.